Thanks, Anthony. Dr. Nicole Constant, ND, began her studies and her practice in naturopathy when she arrived in Canada. Before, she practiced as an MD in Spain. Her work was greatly enriched by years of service as the Health Promotion Officer of the George Hull Center for Children and Families and her participation in CanFit Pro, certifying her as an older adult fitness specialist. She helps families and elders to transition to an active, healthful lifestyle that supports their well-being, mental, physical, and social. She enjoys working with groups of all ages and backgrounds and can help you endure the unusual stress of our pandemic. Nicole practices privately and as a naturopath, registered with the Ontario College of Naturopathy under Ontario's stringent regulations. You are cordially invited to learn more about her work at individualcare.ca or on Facebook as Nicole Constant ND. Dr. Nicole? You have to unmute.
No,
you've got to unmute, Nicole.
Better now?
Yep, can hear you.
Okay, good morning, everyone.
Good
Thank you
morning.
for taking the time to be here with us. It's important, and you are showing it. Your health is important for you. Then I'm just bringing a little bit of more information for you to add to your toolbox. Our talk today is about sugar and our human health. What brings me to all that sugar work? As a child, I have a mother who has high blood pressure, really, really high blood pressure. When we go into school, we're coming back, we never know if we're finding my mother in the house. Then she was addicted to cola. She'll drink big goblet of cola all the time. She's working because she was working on her own. She can have and drink and eat when she wants because the whole thing was hers. Then she'll be drinking cola all the time. Her favorite was grapefruit. But you all know in the island, cola is extremely sweet. Nobody never tell her about the amount of sugar that she was putting in her body was contributing to her weight and her blood pressure. The stress for us as a children, we was 8 children. Each time we go to school, we don't know where are we going to find our mom. It was so much stress. Then that brings me, because that called my attention to see my mother loving that amount of cola all the time. And when I went to medical school, I make myself understand the relationship between my mother's health and that cola that she was drinking all the time. And now I'm going to share that with you because that cola was responsible for us children to be so stressed about my mother's health and for her to have such a high blood pressure, being inflamed all the time. And my mother was overweight and none of that helped. And in that time, for whatever that reason, the practitioner who was working with her did not address her food intake. Thank you. Let's start. Okay. Sometimes I get confused. Okay, now that we talk about that already, we're going to define sugar. First, we're going to define food. What is food? Food is a material that contains essential nutrients. That means things that we can assimilate, that our body can use to produce energy, stimulate growth, to maintain life. And sugar does not fit into that definition. Sugar doesn't give us any essential nutrient, mineral, vitamins. There's no such thing in sugar. Eating sugar will not give us energy. Sugar doesn't stimulate growth. We don't grow. We don't, as a child, you're feeding it sugar, the child will not grow. It doesn't maintain life either. Then sugar doesn't enter as a definition of what we define food. In the Western diet, sugar is really high. We have sugar as high, we have salt really high, we have fat really high. Really high fat, sugar, and salt in our diet. And that sugar intake increases the level of inflammation, and also it reduces our human cells. Our human system get reduced when we using so much sugar. And a lot of time we're using the sugar without knowing that we are using so much sugar, because the sugar straddle the line between healthy and unhealthy, right? We're having, for example, a nice bowl of salad, really healthy food. But at the same time, we buy a bottle of dressing, and that bottle of salad dressing, or in the restaurant or wherever, it's full of sugar if you didn't make it your own self. Then you really debalance the food with that amount of sugar that you're adding over that salad. And a lot of time, we're so used to eat sugar, we're not perceptive of the amount of sugar the food has. Then unconsciously, we're eating that amount of sugar without us contributing consciously to the sugar. Sugar also occurs naturally in food. For example, the fruits. Fruits has sugar in it. That's why most people love fruit. Milk has sugar, the lactose. Sugar is also our worst poison. It contributes to all chronic disease. And this is a major word, chronic disease. You know, as we're getting older, what we have is chronic disease. It kills slowly over time. We have to think about sugar, more sugar in nature. Where do we have sugar occurring naturally in nature? We spoke already about the fruits. We had honey. That's the bees are working hard to allow us to have honey. We have maple syrup, right? Here in Canada, we get good maple syrup. Monk fruit is a kind of fruit that they dry and they extract the sugar. We got stevia. Stevia is from a tree a big tree from Brazil. That is, they use the leaves in order to extract the sugar. We got xylitol. Xylitol is a sugar from tree too. We got molasses, is from sugarcane. We got agave. agave is like it's like an herb. It's not really an herb, but anyway, it's they extract the sugar from it. It's come from nature. They extract the sugar from it. Next one. That's then sugar has also. Let's talk about the microbiome first. You know, in our intestine and all over our body, it's full of bacteria, right? When each human being have a different smell, even if you don't feel it, you don't smell it, we each smell differently, depending on the microbe that live on us and in us. We got microbe all over our body, all over. Any hole in our body is full of microbes, and the major quantity of them are in our intestine, the small and the large intestine. Depending on the type of microbe that we have, it will depend on how well we digesting our food. The microbe also depend on the food that we eat. A person who eats a lot of sugar will have more something they call Akkermansia municipali. That Akkermansia is a bad bacteria. That a bacteria that diminish your immune system. Is a bacteria that make you wanted more sugar. Why? Because he need to get fed. He asks you to feed him. Then you have that desire to go for more sugar and more sugar because Akkermansia is asking for food. And he doesn't want nothing else than sweet food. Then the sugar also contribute in deteriorating the mucus layer of our intestine. You know, the intestine, there's a layer of a mucus layer inside of the intestine. The sugar contribute to deteriorate the mucus layer of the intestine. And think about it. Sugar is not just the sugar, the white thing or the brown thing. Sugar is also high level of carbohydrate. Sugar is also high level of foods, right? Leading, all that will lead to inflammation, right? All get inflamed and inflamed and inflamed. And this is the intestine. And when it's get inflamed, 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 I don't know if you see what's happened with my fingers. I try it again. This is the intestine. It's a tube, right? Then now we eating things who got a lot of sugar. It's irritate the mucus of the intestine, and slowly it's getting inflamed. It's getting inflamed. It's getting inflamed. Can we write on the chat what you think you perceive here? What's happened with my hands? What is the wall of the intestine? I start again. The sugar, lot of sugar, it's getting inflamed. It's getting inflamed. It's getting inflamed. What did you see? Right. You see those holes that create in between the cells. Then the intestine become leaky. Leaky. That means food that was supposed to be inside of the tube here are passing to the wall, and the rest of the body cannot recognize it. And all that contribute to diminish our immune system. Leaky gut contribute to a lot of sickness. Now, the absorption and the use. When we eat food are rich in fructose. When you eat simple sugar, it's glucose. And the glucose and the fructose are absorbed directly into your bloodstream to the lining of the intestine and the small intestine. Sucrose must be broken down first in glucose and fructose by enzyme in the mouth. Because, you know, when we're eating the sugar, it starts breaking out with the saliva in our mouth. The glucose is used for energy. You know we need some glucose for our brain. It's used for energy. Our muscles, when we're doing exercise, use the glucose. That's why exercise is so good for people who are diabetic, because they're using the exercise is burning the glucose, reducing that glucose. And the glucose we didn't use is going to the liver and store as glycogen. Now we got the fructose, that's the glucose. Now fructose is converted to glucose, but it's happened in the liver, right? And the liver will convert it, and part of it will be stored as fat. Remember that? Fructose convert in the liver in glucose, and the part that the body doesn't need, it will store it as fat. While glucose is absorbed directly in the intestine. Now we spoke first about the natural sugars, and now I want to speak about the artificial sugars. Now, a lot of people think it's okay to have artificial sugars. It's totally normal. Then they shake that thing, so many little pockets in their coffee, because they think it's totally okay. But I want to tell you something. You know, aspartame, NutraSweet, Equal, Eve 951, those are all names for the same thing. The studies in the research find out those sugar, artificial sugar, bring the blood sugar way higher than real sugar. Artificial sweetener stimulate the taste bud on the tongue. Then the aspartame is formed with 2 amino acids. 2 amino acids. And those 2 amino acids can aspartic acid and phenylalanine. But phenylalanine, the body can use it. And the both will go in the brain. Depend how much you consume, then it could start accumulating in the body too. Now methanol is absorbed by the body, and most of it is used to produce energy. Methanol is an alcohol sugar, right? It's used to produce energy. Then often hiding out in packages food, right? Sugar, added sugar, is hiding in packages food. Any kind of food that you can think about. You know, we normally think about sugar when we're talking about candy, when we're talking about, you know, we go and buy a piece of cake. We know conscious that we're having sugar, but sugar can be hiding other places where we don't think we're having sugar. We go and buy a pre-cooked food, and there's a lot of sugar in it. Even chicken, barbecue chicken. If you take your time to chew it, you see they added quite a lot of sugar in that barbecue chicken. Those are sugar that we don't think about, that we don't control, that we putting extra in our body. Because a person can say, oh, I don't eat candy. Yes, that's true. You don't eat candy, then you don't bring a sugar extra in my body. But I eat outside. I love barbecue chicken. I love, hey, all those things has a lot of sugar in them. You need to add it up to see how much sugar are you putting in your body. Lunch meat. A lot of people like, corn meat, corn meat, all those palm, all those things are full of sugar. Pure meat, they're full of sugar, right? Those are the way that we're getting sugar in our body without us consciously putting the sugar in. And we have to be aware of that. Also, artificial non-saccharide sweeteners, the aspartame, and right, when we say, oh, we're having a drink, but the drink doesn't have sugar in it, but the drink has aspartame, the drink has NutraSweet, the drink has, and those things are 200 times sweeter than normal sugar, right? And we sometimes think we're doing a better work for our body by having those things. But the aspartame that is in the product, what is NutraSweet equal, is 200 times sweeter than if you was having a normal sugar. Now we continue with the where we find the sugar, right? We get the fructose, we got the sucrose. Sucrose is sugar. You know, those ball of sugar that we can have into. There's invert sugar, right? And the invert sugar is liquid sweeteners, right? Then how do we get invert sugar? You take the table sugar, you liquidify it with some water, and then that broken down between glucose and fructose, and then that gives you the invert sugar. You got maltose, right? Those are sugar that take longer to break in the body because it's formed with two molecules. We got mannitol, what is a sugar alcohol. It's spiked blood sugar as a starchy a new potato, right? New potato, starchy potato, starch the sugar up. Then mannitol, what is a sugar alcohol, does the same thing. We got dextrose, maltodextrin. Those are different names they use to hide the sugar from us in processed food. We got the triacol. That's the way they call, I think, what they call it, molasses. When they mix molasses with sugar to make a new product that they call triacol or golden sugar. And we got the high fructose corn syrup. That one, you know exactly what is it. It's come from corn. It's the high fructose corn syrup. And all those are different ways of calling sugar in our food. What is the health impact of fructose? According to the researches that we have, and the scientific studies have linked fructose to about 30 different specific disease and health problems. It's elevate uric acid, right? People who got gout. It's a really painful problem. It's give us metabolic syndrome. Metabolic syndrome means when you have 3 or 4 diseases at the same time: high blood pressure, high glucose, what is diabetes, you can have gout, all that combined together, we call it metabolic syndrome. It become chronic because when you keep on eating the sugar conscious or unconsciously, the body keep inflammation, and the inflammation never go down. You stay inflamed and inflamed and inflamed all the time. And that is the first step for sickness. Then the consequences is alter your health. It decrease nitric oxide. What is nitric oxide? Nitric oxides allow the arteries to stay open for the blood to flow easily. That is destroy nitric oxide. What is it raises angiotensin and cause your smooth muscle cells to contract, right? You are all the time contracted. It also raises your blood pressure. What I was explaining about my mother is damaging for your kidney. It gives us insulin resistance. What's that? Anybody knows? Can you write in the chat anything that you know or you perceive about insulin resistance? Insulin resistance is, the word said, resistant. That means insulin comes from the pancreas. When we eat carbohydrate, the body, the pancreas send out the insulin to take care of the sugar part of the carbohydrate. But as the insulin come out, the insulin has a job to do. Then it has to take the sugar and take it inside of the cells. But arrive a moment, there's so much sugar to be taken care of, the insulin cannot do the job. And what's happened when we cannot do a job? We sit. The insulin becomes resistant because it's just too much. The insulin cannot with so much. And the insulin can't do the job. Then the insulin becomes resistant. That is, it's not doing the work, it's transporting the glucose inside the cell. Then that means there's a lot of sugar out there. They're not getting inside. It's floating in your blood. Increased risk of fatty liver. A lot of people think having fatty liver means you eat a lot of fat. Not at all. Fatty liver comes from eating too much sugar, too much carb. That's because remember the fructose? The fructose, where do the fructose change in glucose? Remember? Anybody? Write on the chat, please. Where do the fructose change in glucose? We just said it a minute ago. Yes, you're right. In the liver. Then the liver get to work and work and overwork and overwork. That is arrive a moment, right? Right? Fat, because the rest of that glucose, what will happen to it? One part of the fructose will become glucose in the liver and the rest change in fat. Then we're getting fatty liver. Fatty liver is not really because you eat too much fat. It's because you're having too much carbohydrate. That's, we all know. If we become inflamed, we got a big belly, right? We're getting toward obesity. it exacerbates cardiac abnormalities. Because when you get so much sugar, the lining of the intestine is altered, inflammation happens, we get leaky gut. That means things that was supposed to be absorbed in the normal intestine cannot do because they're left by the leaky gut. Then what's happened with us if we don't absorb the minerals and the vitamins from the food? Even though we gain weight, but we become undernourished. And by becoming undernourished, we reduce our immune system. And by becoming undernourished, we easy to grab any kind of sickness that is floating around. And when we pick them up, because we undernourished, our immune system is lower because remember, the amount of sugar that we are eating, the inflammation and the leaky gut, then we don't have as much vitamin, as much mineral to fight with the sickness that we catch. Then we stay longer on the sickness, and consequences can be quite not what we want to have, because we start at a lower level with lack of vitamins and minerals because we're not absorbing it. We're eating too much sugar, too much carb, inflammation, leaky gut. The intestine are not absorbing what we need in order to have a good health. We're reducing our immune system. Then we cannot respond well when we get sick. Then other thing is give us high triglyceride. That's another thing people think is eating too much fat. No, it's having too much carb. Then the metabolic syndrome and gout, we spoke about that already, but I wanted to repeat that because it's such a common sickness on the big toe. Look at that. It just get the whole thing together, right? The fructose, right? The fructose. It gives you insulin resistant, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. It raises your uric acid level, and that's the uric acid will give you the gout, right? It exacerbates the cardiac rhythm. It has a genotoxic effect on the colon, right? The colon. It got a genotoxic effect on the colon. It promotes metastasis. When we have cancer and we're eating a lot of sugar, it promotes metastasis. And that's really not what we want. We want to get cured, not to stimulate metastasis. It causes tubulointerstitial injury, that means in the kidney. It promotes obesity, that we all know that one. It promotes pancreatic sickness, pancreatic growth, pancreatic cancer. How much sugar do we need? The Health Organization is talking about having a man who is in full age. That means around 30, 40 years old, well, 30, 50 years old. A person who is working hard, physical work, who need a lot of energy because the type of work they do. They need 36 grams of sugar a day. And you can see how many spoons are they. That is what 36 grams is.
Wow.
That for most people, it will be also wise to limit the fructose from food. Then we're talking about having around 25 grams a day, right? And that will give you 100 to 150 calories. A person who is working hard can go all the way to 36 grams a day. Physical work, right? But inside of those grams, we need to limit our fructose intake in order to stay inside of that. We cannot have all the sugar that we're taking from fructose only, because we're making the liver work too much and we're exposing ourselves to fatty liver. And the refined sugars, where do we find that? We all know them. All kinds of drinks. People say, oh, I need to have my juice. Please, did you read how much sugar is in that bottle that you buy in Loblaws? Spot drinks. How much sugar is in that? Did you ever take the time to read it? A lot of people are having coffee, but it's an excuse to have sugar. It's not the coffee that they like or the smell of the coffee. Vitamin water. Instead of drinking water, people buy vitamin water. What's that? It's all sugar. The cereal that we buy in the morning, did you ever sit down to read how much sugar is that? They add sugar to a carbohydrate. Add them both together to make the amount of sugar that is in there. Cereal bars, you know, all the sweet, all the treat, all the candy, the baked goods, the bread. Don't forget, bread has sugar in it. White bread is like eating a piece of cake. It's so much sugar. The canned food, diet food, they put aspartame in them, and aspartame is more sugar, higher your insulin, 200 times more than the normal sugar. Sauces, you know, sauce of that, sauce of this. And also all processed food, pre-made meals, they all are really high in sugar. Now, recapitulate, what are the negative effects of sugar? The fatty liver that we spoke about, right? Too much fructose, fructose go to the liver break it down to get you the glucose, but what is not needed by the body is becoming fat. Then it gives you fatty liver. It makes you overweight. It makes you inflame. It accelerates aging, right? When you cannot move, right? You have to sit because you have pain here, you have pain there. It accelerates aging. It has effect on our memory. You know that Alzheimer's is diabetes type 3. Then too much sugar have action on our memory, our oral health, our mouth. It inflames the mouth, the what they call that, gencive, you know, it's all inflamed. And that affects our health. And we went all over those. Then you can have a reading of them. And all those things happen because the body cannot absorb enough mineral and vitamins. And the body is in the back layer. And then it's propends certain type of chronic sickness to develop, because the body needs everything to keep healthy. If certain things are missing, then it develops this kind of sickness or that kind of sickness, depend on what is missing. And when we pick up a thing of sickness out there, we cannot get better because we already missing so many vitamins, so many minerals, so many things, because we eating too much sugar that reduce our immunity, our system. Candidiasis. A lot of young girls, a lot of men too, suffer from candida infection. That means fungus is growing in you. We have those fungus in the microbiome, but it's the proportion of it that makes the difference. If we're feeding too much sugar, then we're feeding those fungus. We got fungus in the toenails, in the fingernails. It also affects fertility. Less spermatozoids, less ovules affect fertility. Then, now that you know what the sugar is doing to our health and to our immune system, how can we remove those? It's difficult for certain people, for most of us, because we're so used to a certain taste. And we think we're losing our life if we don't have that sweet taste in our mouth. That means we have to make a brand change in order to want to make the change, right? Then we have to detox that sugar from our body. Anybody knows how to do that? Can we write in the chat? Each person can write one thing that they think they can do to detox the sugar. Yes, you're right. We have to avoid those food. Isn't that? We have to avoid those food who are high on refined sugar. All those cold drinks. You know, in the summer, you see a lot of people with those big bottle of blue liquid, red liquid. They're just drinking and drinking and drinking. But they never think about how much sugar is in that, how much fructose is in that. Processed food. Everybody, when they leave their home, they feel that they have to enter and buy this and that and the other one. Processed food. One thing I'm saying also, if you want to eat processed food, that's okay. Because right now, you know what the consequences are. But please, do not offer it to your children. They don't know about it. Don't allow them to be hooked to those kind of food. Please. We need to increase our water intake in order to flush that sugar from our body. We need to eat food that are rich in protein, because by eating food that are rich in protein, we feel more full. We're not craving of all those carbohydrates. And also with that, we're changing the bacteria inside of our body, inside of our intestine. And by changing the bacteria, if we have a different bacteria, they ask for different food. By asking for different food, then you pivot around the food that the bacteria in your intestine are asking for. We have to eat more protein, right? The legumes, the nuts, the seeds. Eat food that are high in fiber. Here, in general, people do not eat enough fiber. People in North America, they eat 10, 15 grams of fiber. In Africa, or any place in the mountain of any place, even in the islands, people eat 100 to 150 grams of fiber a day. That's why most people in this country are constipated. Avoid artificial sweetener. Eat real food, food that come from the earth, that come from the farmers. Look for them. Spend more time in the kitchen to prepare your food. That way you know what you put in it. Too much sweet stuff is linked to a myriad of negative health problems. And you really not calling for that. Here we are. You see that fried potatoes, all those burgers, you know, they all rich, is too many sweet. And those are linked to a lot of health problems. One of them, the main one, that inflammation, leaky gut, diabetes, right? Those are not easy thing. Then if we eliminate and we work on reducing that, what the odd alternative that we have? The good news. What is the good news? Think about it. The good news, we can do it right now. Right now, we can choose to reduce the amount of sugar, carbohydrate that we are eating. We don't need a big plate large like that of rice. We don't. We need a big plate large like that of vegetable, of green leafy vegetables. Protein, green leafy vegetables, that's the base of our food to reduce the inflammation. No doctor's visit is needed. No prescription is needed. We can make the choice right now if we want. Thank you.
So, Nicola, there's a couple of questions in the chat.
Oh, I'm glad to answer them.
Okay, can leaky
Okay.
gut be corrected?
Hold on. Is people can see me like that, or you want
Yes,
me to?
we can see you.
Okay, great.
Can
What's
leaky
the question?
can leaky gut be corrected?
Oh, sure. One of the things is to reduce the inflammation. By reducing the inflammation, right? We on the right way, right path. How to reduce the inflammation is to reduce the amount of carbohydrate, sugar that we are putting in our body.
Okay, the next one is, would milk thistle help with a fatty liver?
Yes. Milk thistle contribute to press and scrape the liver in order to be dumping. But milk thistle on its own is not enough.
Okay. The next one is, can government legislate stronger laws to limit the use of sugar in processed manufactured foods?
Can you say it again for me?
Can government legislate stronger laws to limit the use of sugar in processed manufactured foods?
Right. This is a powerful question. This is a $1 million question. I'm going to try it. Anybody knows in what kind of country do we live? Can we write that on the chat? What country do we live? I'm talking about the system. Which system? In which system are we living? Yes, capitalist system. What's that word mean? That word mean I have the right to sell what I want. But you also, as the buyer, you have the right and obligation of teaching yourself what is good for you. Then, if we take it that way, the government can limit certain things who are obvious, who are really disturbing. But the little things, it cannot limit it because carbohydrate is not going to kill you. Is the excess, is too much that contribute on top. It doesn't kill you right away. It takes 20, 40, 60, 70 years to give you all that chronic disease. Is that answer your question?
So the next question is, where does the use of stevia fall in terms of risks? Is it a better alternative to other sweeteners?
They are doing a lot of research on stevia now, but it is a better alternative for now with the information that we have now. Because it's come from a plant, it's the leaves of the plant. But it's a process thing too.
Yeah. The other question is, are we using more sugar during this pandemic?
I hope so. I hope not, but we are. Because look at the size of most people out there. They stay home and they feel this and they feel that and they make a cake. And they feel this and they feel that, they eat a poisson. And they feel this and they feel that, and they make a porridge and they put a lot of sugar in it. And they feel like being with their mother and this and that and blah, blah, blah. They make a coffee and they put sugar in it. Plus, we exercise less. We're not using that glucose because we exercise less. Then we're eating quite more sugar because we had a more, headache.
Yeah. Is stevia better than honey?
I wouldn't say it that way, but I can clarify certain things for you. Honey, when we're talking about honey, you have to know the source. You go to the store, you get 2 bottles of honeys. One is $7, $8, and another bottle the same size is $20, $22. Which one is the real honey here? Then a lot of time we tend to buy the cheapest one, what is not honey anymore, because they put sugar in it, right? Honey has a price. Honey is not a cheap material. Then honey, if it's real honey, is better than stevia. Because honey, the real honey, is not processed. The real honey has still enzyme in it. The thing is, real honey, if you get burned, you can put the honey on top of the burn to relieve the pain, to allow it to heal faster because of the enzyme and the mineral that is in the honey. Stevia doesn't have that because it's been processed. But careful, it has to be real honey.
Other than the price, is there a way of knowing that you're accessing better honey?
How can I close that I can see people? Hold on. How do I close it?
Stop sharing. This at the bottom of your screen, this or the top, sorry, it said stop sharing.
Stop sharing. Need. Okay, hold on.
Right
Stop
to the top.
sharing. Stop video.
Stop sharing. Right at the top of your screen.
New share, pause share.
Well, let's.
Yes, here. Sorry.
Okay, let's continue. Yeah, let's continue.
What was the question again?
Yeah, so the question was, other than the price of the honey, how do we know if we're getting good honey? Is there a particular marking on the bottle or?
No, what I will say, the best way to know that you're getting real honey, yeah, certain marks can be, you can learn it, but for me, the best is to find the apicultor, the person who make the honey.
Okay.
And you buy it directly from him or her.
Okay.
Would you recommend Manuka honey?
I'm not that, I know it's a good honey, but I'm not familiar with it.
Okay, there was another question.
There's one about baking. What is best to use for baking?
What is the best sweetener in baking and cooking? Erythritol.
That's a good one. But the thing is the amount of sugar that you're going to put in the baking. Because, you know, it depends on the taste that you're looking for, right? If you're looking for a maple taste, you know, you cannot add sugar, you won't have the maple taste, right? Because bottom line, the more fructose it is, the more detrimental it is for your health. If you stay more with sucrose and honey and maple syrup, you are in a better environment than the fructose ones. But the quantity is the major thing.
Okay. There's another one here. Is taking probiotics helpful against the effects of inflammation?
Taking a probiotic is helpful to rebuild the bacteria. Remember I say we have the microbiome, that large amount of bacteria that live in our intestine. We can rebuild the bacteria, but careful. If I have a home and I'm cleaning the home and I have 6 children and they go to play outside and they come back with muds in that spot that I'm cleaning, when I will be finishing cleaning, I leave that with you. Same thing with I will never finish cleaning if I allow people to come with the mud over the space that I'm cleaning. Same thing. If you're taking the probiotic, thinking that you can still eat all the sugar you want and say, you're not doing nothing. It's cleaning the house and allow the 6 children to come with the muds. When will you get that house clean? I don't know. I don't see me getting it clean.
Okay, so those are all the questions. So Anthony, do you want to take over from here? You got to unmute. Anthony? Yeah.
Unmute, Anthony.
Yeah. Go ahead, Anthony.
Hi, Nicole. Thank you for your presentation. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And yes, in terms of tying this to the theme, is there 1 or 2 things that you would suggest as a final pointer in terms of coping and sugar in this pandemic?
I think people have to be conscious of how much sugar they're eating. And then when we are conscious, we can work on reducing it. Because as we see, sugar reduce our immune system. Sugar bring us to chronic inflammation. Sugar bring us to chronic sickness then. And also, why should we start life with less chances? Because when we're eating all that sugar, our immune system is so low. If we take any kind of sickness out there, we cannot respond to that sickness because we're missing vitamin, we're missing mineral, we're missing, the sickness just come and destroy us all together. Then it's time to make a conscious effort to reduce the amount of carbohydrate and sugar that we are eating every day. They're not food, we don't need them. Is it making sense?
Makes a lot of sense. Thank you very much. That's the whole point of having this presentation today.
And anytime you need
strategies.
help, you always can find me.
Awesome.